You're listening to the PT Profit Podcast, episode 413. Today, I'm sitting down with Coach Sophia Ashley, and we're discussing how to help parents go from not tonight to let's stay up late. Are you ready? Let's get started. What's up, Coach? Thank you for joining me in another episode of the PT Profit Podcast. I'm your host, Beverly Simpson, and if this is the first time you're hanging out with me today, welcome. I'm super pumped that you're here. Today on the show, I have a very special guest, Sophia Ashley, an intimacy coach for parents who helps people go from not tonight to let's stay up late. She's the host of the podcast Sex After Kids, and she's on the show today sharing all the details on how best to rekindle connection and spark with your partner. Sophia shares her personal journey, common reasons for low libido, misconceptions about it, and practical ways to create intimacy in your relationship. Sophia is also one of my accelerator clients, and she shares all the inside outs of what it is like to be coached by me. So if you're curious about how our process can work for you, check the show notes and schedule your free profit plan. Without further ado, let's roll that interview. What's up, Sophia? How are you? Welcome to the show.
So good. Glad to be here.
I'm super excited to dive in today. What you do is really powerful. And so I just cannot wait to dive in and share more about what it is that you do. So for those of you who are tuning in and you have never been introduced to your work, I'd love for you to share with us a little bit about who you are, who you serve, and how you got there.
Yeah. So I am Sophia Ashley. I'm an intimacy coach for parents, and I help people go from once a night to let's stay up late. I myself am a mom of three. I've got one step kid who's 14 and two bios, one who's 4 and one who's 7. A third baby totally killed my libido. I got Hashimoto's, hypothyroiditis. And I have reinvented my sex life 3 times. And I help other people do the same.
3 times. Okay, so can you share with us, just from your own experience and your expertise, what are some of the common reasons people lose their libido, and what are some of the common misconceptions that you find with low libido partners?
The biggest misconception I think that we see is that our libido needs to be fixed, even.
Mm-hmm.
And while it is true, hormones, stress, fatigue, relationship dynamics, how you feel in your body, how you feel as a sexual person, these are all factors that shift after kids. And they are levers we can pull that help us bring our sex life back to life, I guess. But what they all have in common is stress on your system and an overwhelmed nervous system that doesn't want to let more input in. And so as a lower libido person, you just have every reason in the world to say no and not a lot of reasons to say yes, especially if the sex you're having is painful or mediocre because things have shifted and your body doesn't respond in the same way that it used to, right? So I don't like to advocate for fixing people's libido anymore. I like to figure out how to create the conditions for intimacy no matter what's happening in your life.
Yeah, and so I know, I feel like along that same line, people, I think, and I'm curious your opinion, is that they equate intimacy to sex when in reality there's a ladder, essentially. So I'm curious, could you talk a little bit about what an environment looks like that break down what intimacy means for you, and then what does an environment of connection and an intimate connection actually look like?
For sure. So what happens is often we get into this cycle, this negative feedback loop, or this merry-go-round of avoidance, where one person is asking a lot and getting turned down a lot and getting rejected a lot. And that person is creating the story that my person doesn't want to have sex with me, so they don't love me anymore. I'm not attractive to them. I'm not desirable. When really it's all these other factors that we talked about. And then typically what will happen is there's a period of saying no, then someone will cave and we'll have duty sex or maintenance sex. And sometimes it ends up being good, and oftentimes it's not. So then we've had a negative interaction. So now my lower libido person is flirting less, touching less, just like showing me love less because they're afraid that any little touch is going to lead to an invitation to sex. So they just like cut back on all the day-to-day intimacy, all the day-to-day loving gestures and connection. And higher libido partners will sometimes also withhold that because of their hurt. They're feeling rejected. So like, I'm not going to like love on you and give you a bag rub if you're not having sex with me.
Yeah.
So we end up in this cycle where we're not touching, we're not flirting. If we kiss each other, it's like a peck on the cheek. Like there's no intention or mindfulness or presence to being like, hi, I'm here with you. I see you. We're here together.
Yeah.
Those moments happen less and less. And then it just reinforces the cycle.
Yeah. So now when you're working with people, are you typically working with coaches? Are you typically working, well, it could be coaches, listen. Are you working with people who are like in a fighting cycle, or is this sometimes even is down to like, hey, there's nothing wrong in our relationship. It's just flat or boring, or what are some of the words that they use to describe their
So I would say the biggest piece I see is like, I love my person. They are my person. I don't want to leave. I don't want to get a divorce. And I can't keep doing this. And I think for the higher libido partners, it's that feeling of rejection. They've just made such an equation there and they feel so unloved. I think also the relationship can feel kind of flat. Like we're surviving through parenthood. We're not thriving. We don't feel those, like I call them the new crush vibes from your honeymoon stage where like you're excited every time they walk in their room and you like want to be touching them and want to be next to them, right? That's why we cheat. We're looking for that aliveness that comes from somebody looking at us and wanting to be near us and wanting to be around who we are, right? And so I'm not usually working with people who are like really struggling to communicate and dealing with like really, really big foundational issues. It's usually more there's a mismatch in libido and my lower libido partner is feeling guilty and a lot of pressure and a lot of not enoughness. They're like, most of them are like, I just want my libido. I want to want sex.
Yeah.
Desperately.
Would you say that what would you say to the people who come from a place of like, well, I just don't need it, or it's not important to me? And what about the concept of love languages where people feel like, oh, physical touch is just not my love language? What would you say? How do you deal with those types of situations and experiences?
So, I mean, my work started because I spent my 20s struggling with sex. Painful sex, struggling with orgasm. Like, sex was just a thing that did not feel easy for me. And what I learned in that work is many women in particular, because of all the trauma around sex in society, we're like walking around completely disconnected from our vaginas. It's like we just locked them in a closet and said, I don't need you, I'm good.
Yeah.
When really, your vagina is like your second heart, right? There's a reason we say now we're talking about periods being the fifth vital sign, up there with like your pulse and your circulation rate and stuff to tell you an indication of your health. And when we disconnect ourselves from that, we lose a piece of who we really are, essentially. And so a lot of us are walking around numb to that part of ourselves. And we think it's okay because it's so normalized. And actually, society really wants us to be caught up from that because that's where our power lives, ultimately. So without getting too woo about it, I'd just say two things. One, Your body was made to feel pleasure, sexual pleasure, and it is a benefit to you. It helps you deal with stress. It improves your immune system. Your body was designed to experience it beyond reproduction. And then the other piece is, there's no problem. Like, this is not a frequency question, right? Like, if you're having sex once a year and you're both happy with that, great. No issues. What we end up with is a mismatch where one person is putting a lot of importance on sex as a way of feeling validation and love. So sometimes we got to like pull that apart a little bit. And one person is really generally, quite honestly, like so disconnected from their body that they're just not in tune with this part of themselves anymore. And that happens through perimenopause, menopause, motherhood, cancer diagnosis, like any of these big life transitions are going to affect that. And when you can reconnect with that part of yourself, you reconnect with your desire. And ultimately, it's about deciding how important this relationship is to you. So I'm not advocating that anyone force themselves to have sex. My method is all about how to create the conditions for intimacy without forcing yourself. But if sex is important to your person and you've decided it's not important at all, you both need to meet each other in the middle somewhere that's going to feel good for both of you.
Yeah. Do you find that people who feel like it's not important to them, that really they just haven't unlocked how pleasurable it can be for themselves and in connection with their partner?
Definitely. And I would say it feels, there's a little monitor in your brain that's measuring how much effort you put out for things and how much reward you get. And it says if you're putting too much effort and you're not getting the reward, you get that like effort moment where your brain's like, I'm not doing that. And people can experience this during exercise, finding a dieting plan, like whatever it is. And so if you're dealing with menopause and your vagina is dry and orgasm's really hard and sex is painful now, your monitor is like, sex is not a relaxing, fun, pleasurable place to go.
Yeah.
So why bother?
Right.
And often a big piece of the work for low libido partners is to like rewire that, to find out like where is the fun, relaxing, pleasurable place for me to go.
Yeah, I love that. So what are some of the, biggest ahas that your clients discover when they are working with you? Like why do they come to you? And what would you say are the biggest like, whoa, I didn't realize that this was so powerful moment?
I think for my mamas and my lower libido mamas, it's when they see the connection between their people pleasing and they're putting everyone else before themselves to the point where they have like no pleasure and no desires of their own and no space for themselves anymore. And when I make the connection to them for between that and their sex life, it's like a huge moment for them, because that's the piece, is if we're not allowing ourselves rest, joy, laughter, dance parties, giggles in our day-to-day, like I don't want sex. So a lot of it is about that permission, and it's about how hard we are on ourselves and the expectations and pressure to perform piece, right? So men and women or both folks come at this with a progression to perform in different ways. And when I'm talking to my dads and my higher libido partners, I think it's really the like, it's not that she doesn't love me anymore. It's that there's so much going on. And we need to fix out how to rewire that.
Yeah, that's powerful. Okay, can you walk us through your method? Like what do you do? What's the process in connecting your people?
Yeah, so when people work with me in the Naked Fun Comeback, which is my signature program for couples, people can start it on their own if their partner's resistant, but typically I'm seeing people who are like, okay, we're ready to like tackle this together. I'm basically walking people through what I call the naked, sexy, fun time cycle. So we've got initiation. Somebody is making a move. We're transitioning, which means we're leaving parent mode and entering sexy lover land. There's the actual moment, whatever is happening. And then there's debriefing, which most of us get, which is like, what went well? What didn't go well? And so this is the cycle. Most of the people I talk to are stuck in initiation. They are not getting past go. They are not connecting to $200. Sometimes it's more about staying stuck in your head and not being able to get into your body. Sometimes it's about erectile dysfunction or struggle with orgasm, right? We can have challenges at each part of the cycle. And so I'm basically doing like hands-on guided interactive dates for people where they go through the cycle over and over and over, and they master the 4 desire drivers. And the 4 desire drivers are nervous system, which is everything from understanding how your libido actually works and how to invite it to the party, and how like stress and your nervous system and trauma are getting in the way of your desire for sex. There's communication, which is everything from creating vision for what we want our sex life to look like, to how do I give feedback in the moment, and how do I even know what I want, and how do I set boundaries. And then the last 2 are your mindsets about sex. So what expectations do you have about how it's all supposed to work, and who's supposed to make the most first move, and whether sex is even a good, wholesome, healthy thing to do, or whether we got quicks about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one is our relationship to pleasure, which I was talking about a little bit earlier. Is like, do you see yourself as a sexual person? Are you connected with that? And do you give yourself permission for pleasure in your life? And so we master those 4 ingredients at each phase of the cycle. And by the end, we're at a place where we are initiating confidently, whether we are high or low libido, without forcing ourselves. And sex just feels like a natural, easy, spontaneous thing to do instead of this thing that we're arguing about or avoiding all the time.
Okay. So, what do you have a process where you help with like like a recovery time? Like, what would you say, if it like something goes not according to plan, right? And we're reinforcing nervous system. Does that happen? What do you do?
Totally. So people have Voxer access to me while they're doing the course modules, and so I'm working through stuff in real time. Even just yesterday, I had a couple who was like, we watched the pleasure module, and then I ended up doing some stuff I wasn't really comfortable doing. And so I talked with Amy through what he could have done differently. I talked with her through what she could have done differently. And like real time, they get to try that again and have it go differently. But I do have something called the Rejection Recovery Toolkit, which is really to support higher libido partners to handle the no with more grace, so they're not adding more pressure through the system. And we even talk about like mindful solo time and how to take care of ourselves without relying on pornography and other things that we don't need to get into a whole debate about porn right now, but the point is that it can derail your efforts if we're not using it in the right way. And so we want to acknowledge those urges that people have and help them work through that as they're rebuilding this process.
Oh, yeah, because there's all the science behind how porn changes your brain. So it starts to, which is a whole big debate, I know, and we won't have to unlock that can of worms.
Well, just say like, I am not against porn as a sex educator, and you can use it problematically, just like anything. If you use it to escape what's happening, if you use it and develop very unrealistic expectations about what sex looks like, because like, let me be very real. The bottom line in all of this stuff is people have been having mediocre sex most of their life. And then they had kids and everything changed and their mediocre skills are not working for them anymore. Because nobody talked to you about how to sustain libido in a long-term relationship in high school sex ed. You learned how to not make a baby and how to not make a disease, how to not trade diseases.
And that's it.
So we're all just fumbling through this with no actual skill. And the answer is just to get some skills.
You know, yeah, it's so funny because I'm like, we're talking about this in high school and all we're talking about is prevention. We're not taught how to eat or work out in high school. We're not taught how to like live life and manage money and be an adult. And I just had this moment while you were talking where I stopped and thought, like, what the heck did we learn in high school? Like, what did you learn?
Algebra. Grammar.
Oh my God.
It's what AI can do for us now.
I know, it's funny, but not funny. It's funny, but not funny. Okay, and so I'm also curious too, like, if you don't mind sharing, how did you get here? How did you get into this? Like you said, you struggled in your 20s. What was the moment for you where you were like, enough is enough. I can't keep doing this.
Yeah, well, you know, I was thinking back to it, and actually, it was a moment with the previous partner where we were in the middle of having sex, and I got kind of triggered, and I, like, nothing he was doing, I had this visceral get off me reaction, and he felt really shitty afterwards, like, he didn't feel good. Obviously, I didn't either, because it wasn't anything he did. It was a memory that was triggered for me, right? And he just looked at me afterwards and was like, I don't want to live that again. And like, we can't keep doing this, you know? And so I called a sex therapist. We had like one in the small rural town that we live in. And she was like, you can come and sit on my couch and talk to me for $150 an hour. And that might help. And we can unlock what you believe about sex and all this stuff. And she's like, I think you just actually don't know how to have an orgasm. Yeah. And so she recommended this book. I think it's called For Yourself. I forget the name of the author because it's so long ago now. And that was like the first domino. And then the second big domino was I read a book called Vagina, a New Biography by Naomi Klein. And this is for my low libido partners who think they don't want to ever have sex again. In this book, she talks about the orgasm gap, right? How most heterosexual women, or 70% of them, are dissatisfied in bed. And that is by design. And the patriarchy doesn't want us walking around with great orgasms because it literally changes your brain. It gives you superpowers. If we were all having great sex all the time, the world would be very different.
Oh, wow.
And so that started me on this path of like, where, in particular for women at the time, our vagina owners, like, what is the relationship between being disconnected from your vagina and being disconnected from your power and your voice, right? Then I got certified in Tantra. I didn't want to do the sex therapy thing. I felt like it was very pathologizing. And Tantra was just a very holistic modality where it thinks about my sexuality as it fits in my whole life. And then I had a couple kids. And then I was like, wow, nobody's talking about sex after kids specifically. And if they are, they're only talking about it in the postpartum period. And it's just a whole new world.
Yeah, it's so true. Like you said, like going from mediocre to like less than mediocre. And it's we talk about this often in because this is the health and wellness space. Like, don't get it twisted. Your intimacy and connection is directly related to your health. But when we're talking about like, your physical it is physical health. But when we're talking about it in the fitness space, I'll say that is that everyone's walking around in the I'm fine coma without realizing how good it could actually be.
Yeah.
Right. So they don't even know what to ask because people don't know what it is that they don't know.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the things and tools that have helped your clients really navigate the uncertainty? Some people will call it fear, but it's really just navigating the unknown of exploring a new side of what's possible in intimacy.
Yeah, because the irony is, I think a lot of people come to me feeling like they've tried it all when they've literally done nothing. Like they've maybe read a book
Yeah.
and maybe gone to see a counselor who doesn't specialize in sex. And that's it.
Yeah.
And it's scary to put effort in a place that's so tender. And I guess, I also think back to my own early journey where it's like your sexuality is this deep, dark hole, and you're like terrified of sticking your head in there and being like, what's in here? And then you do, and you realize it's not actually that deep, dark, and scary, right?
Yeah.
I think for me, the biggest motivator is all this self-development work, whether it's fitness, whether it's for your relationship to money, whether it's sex, they all kind of lead back to the same place.
Yeah.
They lead back to the same place of like self-leadership, taking accountability for like the life that you want to create.
Yeah.
Being really good at knowing what you want and setting boundaries around what you don't want. And enjoying the most that you can out of life. And sometimes I try to tell people like, doesn't have to be like an extra thing where you're just fixing your sex life. If you master these skills, you will be a better parent. You will show up differently at work. You will show up differently in your relationship, and you will show up differently like as a human yourself. And that's like been the biggest motivator for me and the people that I work with.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's also, disheartening because human beings tend to be extremists and in any area. And so I feel like when we're talking about intimacy and sex, people come from like two sides of extremeness where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't even look at somebody because, I'm so on the conservative side of intimacy. Or they think it's like, okay, I'm just, the other side, whatever the other side is, right?
Crazy,
yeah, like I'm just like, I look at someone and then I'm sleeping with them, like,
Yeah.
and that's not obviously, and I'm not even like layering in morality. I'm not even talking about religion at all. It's just the way our society is set up is just, we always live in extremes, or we are exposed to extremes, and and no one knows how to navigate the middle, I feel like.
Well, and it's your brain tripwires, right? Like I'm always telling people there's a whole world between I don't want to and I'm going to force myself and I'm hot and horny and ready to go.
Right.
Like
Yes.
I'm not initiating from hot and horny ready to go most of the time. And I'm still having great sex. I'm 10 years in, 3 kids in, and probably in the best era of my relationship right now because I'm leaning into all that middle part. Or another example is even like last night. We celebrated our 8-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Got the Airbnb. Mom took the kids.
Yeah.
My husband was fucking exhausted.
Yeah.
He was out all day, emotionally, physically depleted. And I was like, wow, I can see myself doing this. And I know people go to the all or nothing. If we're not going to have a 3-hour sex marathon, we might as well have just stayed home and done dishes.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And instead, if you stay home and do dishes, you're taking a step towards the relationship you don't want, which is people stay in this coma. They feel not alive. They feel like they're not thriving. And someone busts and cheats or leaves because they have decided they don't want to live in the coma anymore. And their partner's like, I'm cool. And they just can't handle it anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or last night, we didn't even make love. We watched a rom-com. We read design books, but we had a lovely, connected evening with no chores and responsibilities and took a step towards the relationship that I want to be in.
Yes, yes, it's so powerful. I'm also curious too, you know, how you mentioned time and how people's sex lives and and intimacy levels and their connection, how does it change over time? And how do you recommend people navigate change? Because I've been with my husband 17 years, and I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, we are not the same people we were when we got married. And if you were to ask me how I've navigated it, I would have no idea. I'd be like, I don't know. I was just, I
don't
woke
know.
one day and we're different.
Here we
We're on the
are.
same. Yeah. So it's like, what do
Yeah.
you do with your couple?
Well, and that's funny because that is one of those misconceptions that like your libido is just this static thing. But hello, your libido is biological. So it's going to change your whole life as you age, as you get sick, as your parents get sick and you become a caregiver, as you go through menopause or perimenopause, as we mentioned. And it's relational. So my identity and how I shift as a human and how my relationship shifts, all of that affects my libido.
Right.
And so I think to me, it's just like naming that, acknowledging that. And I mean, the people who stay married for a long time, it's like you acknowledge that you're going to have 17 marriages within your marriage. And you just tune in when you're on the cusp. Things are shifting, people are shifting, and you notice and you are constantly reinventing together what that looks like. And your sex life is the same. And I'll give you a perfect example. I met my husband when my stepson was 4. And I remember early on being like, whoa, I've entered married with kids sex land overnight. And I haven't had a baby. I'm used to making love pretty much every morning, pretty much every night, maybe in the middle of the night. And now I'm lucky if I get laid 3 times a week.
Oh, interesting.
So I was like, okay, got to recalibrate here because my partner was the lower libido partner at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I have my first baby, probably had a diagnosed depression and anxiety from postpartum. My body has exploded. And, you know,
I'm not laughing at you. I just know this intimately.
You know, I can still picture myself in my 90 with like my nipples gone because my kid, like, God. Anyways, point being, we got to a point where we noticed over time, my husband was like, we have to have sex at least once a month. Because basically he noticed like we'd have sex, we'd be great, and then the tension would build. And in the tension, the last thing I want to do is have sex with you, except I realized over time that it did help. So we made an agreement, right? This is an overt negotiated thing where someone's going to tap someone on the shoulder once a month. We were not full going for the glory. This was real basic, bitch. But it worked for us at the time. You know, and then we evolved out of it, and then we had a surprise 3rd pregnancy. And after my 3rd kid, I didn't know I was battling an autoimmune disorder, and I very much was like, I could never have sex again and be fine. Except that I felt guilty and I felt bad, and you know, and then we moved to, we'll do it, but only if you do all the work, which also just made me feel bad, right?
Yes.
And I started to notice. We tried the maintenance 6 thing from our first baby, and that was backfiring on me because I was craving novelty and like new experiences. And so when we had a mediocre night, I was like, whoa, this is making me not want to do this anymore. And so all through all of that, the theme is we're talking about what's working and not working. We're talking about what we both need. We're talking about what we're both capable of, and it's evolving over time.
That, I think, is one of the most underrated and most important components is that you're allowed to change. Your needs are going to change. Everything else changes. Why would that stay the same?
Yeah, and you don't bounce back to your pre-baby body. So why would you expect to bounce back to your pre-baby sex life?
So true. So true. You know, it's interesting as you were talking, I was reflecting back on our experience, and we have, you know, It took us after our children like 9 months, and that was because I was freaking. I mean, I've told the story before on the podcast, so he doesn't he doesn't die. But if he did hear this, he would die because my husband's a private person. I'm not. I'm like, whatever. But he's like, there was one time I was crying in the shower because it was hurt so bad, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is worse than labor. And he was like, I was present in your labor. I can't even believe you would say that. And I said, if they wanted to teach abstinence in high school, this is how they would do it. Like I will do the presentation on how to do it.
Yeah.
Because this is it. Okay. And he was like, he said to me, you cannot even begin to imagine how painful that is to hear. And I was like, I'm sorry, but it's the truth. And it was interesting because we also were having like when things get tense, I know unconsciously I can just like count back down days and be like, all right, we're not connected. And my husband is physical touch. That is a love language of his. And I know this for sure. So, it just, it helps it without, just plain and simple. Like when it's like tension for no real reason.
Yeah.
There's a missing connection. It's like, you're just irritating me because you're existing.
Mm-hmm.
That connection, intimacy usually helps, period.
Yeah.
It's funny. Okay, so I'd love for you, right? I have loved listening and learning and part of my favorite part of my job as a coach for accelerators is really getting the benefits, because honestly, I have learned so much from you. But the benefits of learning from my coach's expertise. Like I swear, you're all, everyone in the community is just so exceptional in what it is that they do, in their expertise. It's a pleasure and a privilege to help you get your message out to the people that need what it is that you do. Okay. So with that said, I'd love for you to share just a little bit about what brought you to the community and some of your biggest takeaways in our work together. I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I would actually put my business on pause for a little while because I went to be an executive director. And so I came back to it in early 2024. And I think it was around that time that I bumped into Brandon's conversion messaging. And it's really ironic, not ironic, it's how it goes. But for anyone listening, at that time, I'd been considering his program and, freaked out at the price, waited a year and a half, probably paid 10 grand in other lower ticket programs. And then after I joined your program, absolutely had that moment of, it's so fucking true, where I just wasted 18 months and the same amount of money when I could have just started this at the beginning. So for anyone listening who's like, do I not? Just fucking do.
Very
be serious about starting your business. And that comes from also I really appreciated your guarantee and your commitment. And I made $3 grand in my referral run within the first 2 weeks of working with you, which was amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
The proof is very much in the pudding. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I remember one of the things I remember about your enrollment call too is the feeling of frustration that comes from putting your business on pause, right? So I always am 100% transparent when we're talking about clients' experiences, because we're dealing with the compound effect. And I'm sure your clients feel this too, right? It's you are taking the steps and getting the lessons and the skills that are required to generate the revenue or to get whatever success looks like for you. And sometimes in the moment, it doesn't feel like that's happening. You just feel like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it again, or whatever the case may be, right? It's different for every person. However, the courage required to go back to the stove that burned you, when you were cooking,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That is so underrated and under discussed when it comes to growing our business, because it's just like, no, go do this. Here are all the steps. When in reality, there's so much of the invisible work that is required
Yeah.
to do it again.
Well, I think too, I'm just remembering back, like part of my frustration has been, so like I have a background in marketing and communications, right? I've been doing this for 20 years for other agencies and whatever, and in my small town context. So I know a thing about an audience and messaging and on audience journey and stuff. And I kept doing a bunch of sort of mostly do-it-yourself stuff. And I think part of it for me, and if people are listening, like maybe this is you, I wasn't acknowledging that like I'm already 80% good. I need the last 10%, and that last 10% can't come from a do-it-yourself program. It has to come from you literally reading my copy and my posts and my whatever to make it that last 10% better, because I was just fine before the pandemic and all that stuff. And now you got to be that much sharper. And I was like, I'm following the framework. I'm doing all the thing. I know the fucking basics. There's something missing here that I just cannot see. And I need somebody else's eyes on it.
I think that's so important. Everyone has blind spots. Every single person has blind spots and roadblocks, right? I also think too, I've said this, and I've said this too for myself. Like, this is also why I'm always coaching other people, is I think that, and getting coached myself, I mean, is that I think that we get so close to our own stuff, and especially when we're good, right? Like, that's like it's like sometimes it's like, wait, I'm good at this. I know this. I've seen this. So it can be hard to identify our own blind spots, to be like, wait, why isn't this working? What is something that I'm not seeing? And I think that that's, especially when you have experience. Like, experience is just like everything. It's a double-edged sword. It's like, I have evidence that says I'm great. I have evidence that says I'm not great. And you just, this is very similar to your work, right? So without getting too woo, but it's true. It's that you are going to fuel whatever story you're playing in that brain. And we need those pattern interrupts.
You versus you, yeah.
It
really is.
So you need those patterns, right? You need those pattern interrupts. And I also think it's important that you need to find the coach that jives with you. I've had experiences that are like, great ones, and also ones where are like, well, that was an expensive lesson I wish I didn't learn.
Yeah. Just how it goes. Yeah. But it's interesting. I was just telling my husband last night, like, I guess the other thing is like just having compassion with ourselves to be going through the learning process, right? Like, even I was recording a podcast the other day and I started 3 times. And I could see myself getting tripped up on like wanting it to be perfect and being in the conversion method framework and everything. And then I was like, just get it done. Like, you'll be 1% better than the last time.
Yes.
But I can already see that I am like assessing my content through a different lens, right? Like, I posted the other day and it was a talking head, and then I changed it a little bit. And even now, like, I already know what's wrong with it, which I wouldn't have before. And so it's like this subtle, like, the lessons are working you without you like totally realizing it, but you are trying to completely change your glasses, essentially, on how you see it all.
Yeah, for my smart high achievers like you, it can also be, it can sometimes be that I don't know why. I think it's because I'm watching The Bear that I'm having all these like cooking examples come to me. It's like you keep putting all these ingredients into a pot, and then at some point, like, it becomes less about the precision and perfection of what's in there, and then it just lets it, like, you just gotta let it cook and let it cook. Don't pull out. Don't pull the soup off the stove before it's cooked all the way through. Otherwise, you're going to get some chicken in there that's got salmonella, right? Or like, it's like pulling the cake out of the oven. At some point, it just gets to be. It's like we learn the biomechanics of how to squat so that you can become unconsciously competent in squatting. Not you just do it, right? But that's only going to, that kind of skill is only going to come with reps. And then, but you know, can you get through that stick, that ick, that like valley of despair? And that comes with courage.
Well, and even yesterday I was mapping with my staff. I was like, okay, we're going to think through like all the doors that people are walking through. And then there's all the pathways people can take once they walk through that door, whether it's a freebie or a low ticket or a DM to me on social media. And it can be overwhelming because you're literally building this universe of like people can walk through one door and take like 4 paths, and you got to write all the content for all those paths.
I know.
But then it was also like, okay, we're going to get to the end of this month having built 2 doors to 75%. And we will get to the end of August and, add some more salt and pepper and get those doors to 80-90%. And then we'll add some new doors that people can walk in through.
So good. And what is so exciting about this whole process of building this machine, essentially, which is what we're doing, is that once you get it, it's like building a house, right? You have all this work, the foundation to build the walls, but then once it's up, you spend the rest of your time just making it beautiful for you. And then the ease comes. You know, which I think is just powerful.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, and it's really like, I've just been trying to reflect on, there was a really great early win with the referral run. And the other piece I would say is, it's funny because I can still watch myself like resisting the content framework sometimes. And maybe it's because I'm still trying to mesh it with my like style or creativity.
Yeah, because to make it sound like you is essential.
Like I was absolute crickets in the DMs before I started this program. And I probably had like 15 or 20 conversations this week.
This week, girl, like that is so good. Yes.
Yeah. So it's working.
Yeah.
The proof is in the pudding, friends. And I'm just excited for it to keep going.
Yes, to continue to grow. And your expertise is so important and so valuable. And so I can't wait until everyone gets to hear and see what it is that you do. Okay. So I want to be respectful of your time. So for those who are tuning in are like, dude, this is me. You just talked about me and my partner. What are some of the best places that I can send them?
Yes, I'd say the best place to send them is my Instagram or Facebook. Instagram is at the Happy V Project. I would say probably right now that's the best place to go.
Okay, great. And so I'll just send them to your DMs.
Yeah.
Okay. So thanks so much, girl.
You cannot out TMI me. All right. Come into my DM. Tell me what's not working.
Yes. I love it. I love it. All right. So we'll make sure we link that up into the show. In the show notes. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Beth. We'll talk to you soon.